you are standing in this really crowded, noisy street market in London.
Oh, yeah, a very overwhelming environment.
Right. The sun is shining. There are, hundreds of people just pushing past you, and you have just spotted it.
The treasure.
Exactly. The perfect vintage leather jacket. I mean, you want it, but the vendor standing behind the table is staring right at you, just waiting for you to say something. And suddenly, your brain completely freezes.
Completely blanks out.
Right. If you translate the words from your native language directly into English right in that exact moment, you might accidentally insult this person.
Yeah, you really might.
Or, you might ruin the deal entirely.
Oh.
Or you might end up paying double what the jacket is actually worth. So, welcome to the deep dive.
It is such a terrifying moment for so many people. Just that sudden realization that the grammar rules you learned in a quiet classroom do not always help you in a loud, totally unpredictable real-world situation.
Oh, I have absolutely been in that exact situation, and the panic is very, very real. So today, our mission is to unpack a highly practical, but, deeply intimidating survival skill that we pulled from a really fascinating stack of source material. We are going to explore the delicate psychological art of negotiating and bargaining in English.
Yeah. And we should probably clarify right at the top, just so we are all on the same page. Bargaining is when you discuss the price of something with the seller, trying to reach an agreement that is lower than the original price.
Right.
And, in some cultures, this is an everyday occurrence, like you bargain for your groceries.
Totally normal.
Yeah. But in others, it is incredibly rare. But in the context of English-speaking outdoor markets, it has its own very specific set of unspoken rules.
Exactly. And I want to talk directly to you, the listener, for a second here, because we know that bargaining in a foreign language can be terrifying. I mean, nobody wants to sound rude.
No.
Nobody wants to seem aggressive. And you definitely don't want to make a mistake that makes you look foolish in public. Plus, today's topic is especially geared toward those of you who are currently learning English.
Right, which means we are going to adjust our approach today just a little bit.
Yeah, we are going to take our time, we're going to speak very clearly, and we're going to keep the vocabulary as accessible as possible.
And if we introduce a complex word, we will absolutely define it for you.
Exactly. We're going to slow down the pace so you can truly absorb these phrases. We want you to put these tools in your pocket and actually feel confident using them. Because mastering this type of English isn't just about saving a little bit of money. It is actually this really fascinating window into the cultural psychology of what we might call polite confrontation.
Polite confrontation. I mean, it sounds like a complete contradiction, doesn't it?
It really does. An oxymoron.
Right. How can a confrontation, a literal disagreement over money, be polite? But that is exactly what the English language tries to achieve in these specific market settings. It uses very soft, very careful phrasing to mask the tension of demanding a lower price.
Yeah.
It basically transforms a financial transaction into a friendly, collaborative dance.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even step onto that dance floor and start haggling over prices, we have to understand the environment we are walking into. We really need to set the scene, because the physical environment completely changes the way people speak.
Oh, absolutely. The setting dictates the language. You cannot use the same English in a muddy outdoor market that you would use in a quiet, expensive department store.
Right. So let's paint a picture using some of the fantastic details from our notes here. Imagine you are traveling. Maybe you're walking down Portobello Road in London on a super busy Saturday morning.
Classics.
Yeah. Or you are at the massive Rose Bowl flea market in California under the hot afternoon sun. Or, maybe you are squeezed into a tiny, dusty tent selling vintage clothes in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah, the atmosphere is intense.
It is. There are thick crowds of people. It is noisy. You can hear music playing. People shouting across the street. You've got the smell of street food in the air. There are just piles of antique furniture, endless racks of old denim jackets, and cardboard boxes filled with random, beautiful junk.
And it is an environment built entirely around discovery. The driving philosophy of these spaces is that old English saying, one person's trash is another person's treasure.
Right.
People are hunting for something unique, something that has a history.
Yes, the thrill of the hunt.
Yeah.
You were looking through a box of old vinyl records feeling totally relaxed.
Right.
But then the hunt gets interrupted. You walk up to a vendor's table, and the vendor spots you. They look right into your eyes, they smile, and they give you the standard polite English greeting. They say, "Hi, can I help you find anything?"
And for an English language learner, That incredibly simple question can trigger absolute panic.
Oh, complete panic.
It really does. The immediate psychological reaction for a lot of people is this feeling of being trapped. They think, oh no, this person's talking to me, now I have an obligation, I have to buy something, or I just have to run away.
Right, fight or flight kicks in. So what do people usually do when they panic? They try to quickly translate their native language directly into English in their head.
Which is so dangerous in this context.
So dangerous. Let's say their native language is Spanish or Mandarin or German. They think of the phrase they use back home, they translate it word for word, and they end up blurting out something very clunky. They look at the vendor and say, I just see, or I just look.
And we really need to pause here and break down why that is a mistake.
Please do.
Because if we look at it purely logically, I just see, makes sense.
Yeah.
You are explaining your current physical action with your eyes. You are seeing.
Right. It is factually true.
Factually true. But to a native English speaker, it sounds incredibly abrupt. It sounds unfinished.
It almost sounds like you are angry they interrupted you. Like, leave me alone, I just look.
Exactly. It completely lacks the social cushioning that English speakers expect in customer service interactions. When you say, I just look, it can come across as defensive, cold, or even slightly rude, even though the speaker absolutely does not mean it that way at all.
Right. They're just trying to communicate.
Exactly. It is purely a translation error in tone.
Okay, so if I say, I just look, it's like putting up a solid brick wall in front of the vendor. It just kills the conversation. I'm guessing we need something softer. What is the proper linguistic shield here?
The perfect phrase you need to memorize, the one that instantly removes all the pressure, is, I'm just browsing, thanks. Or, as a really good alternative, just looking around.
Okay, I'm just browsing. Let's
Right.
really look at that word. Browsing. To me, browsing feels like putting your car in neutral gear.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The engine is running. You are sitting in the vehicle, but you haven't committed to a direction yet. You aren't driving forward, and you aren't going into reverse. You are just resting there safely.
That is a brilliant analogy. Putting the car in neutral perfectly captures the energy of browsing. Originally, the word browse actually referred to animals like deer casually eating leaves from trees.
Wait, really? Like deer eating leaves?
Yeah. They are grazing, they take a bite here, they take a bite there. They are moving from item to item without any strict purpose or rush.
Oh, wow, that makes so much sense. So when you tell a vendor, I'm just browsing, you are communicating very clearly that you are not ready to make a commitment.
Precisely. You are removing the pressure from yourself because you are stating you have no intention to buy right now. And equally importantly, you are removing the expectation from the vendor. You are telling them, do not waste your sales energy on me right now.
But there is a second half to that phrase in our source notes that seems incredibly important.
Right.
You don't just say, I'm just browsing.
Yeah.
You're supposed to say, I'm just browsing, thanks.
Yes.
Why is adding that simple thank you or thanks at the end so culturally critical in these English-speaking markets? I mean, why am I thanking them for just saying hello?
That is the social cushion we mentioned earlier. In English-speaking cultures, acknowledging someone's offer to help is mandatory for politeness. The vendor offered you a service. Even if it was just the offer of assistance, it was a gesture of hospitality.
Ah, I see. So if I don't say thanks, I am basically ignoring their hospitality.
Yes. By saying thanks, you are acknowledging their effort. You are being respectful of their space and their time, even while you are rejecting their service. It creates a very friendly boundary. It effectively says, I see you, I appreciate that you run this shop, but I do not need your assistance right now.
It is friendly, but it is firm. It keeps the car in neutral. But I also imagine that my body language has to match the words, right? If I stare aggressively at the ground, cross my arms tightly over my chest, and mumble, I'm just browsing, I feel like that would still be super awkward.
Yeah, nonverbal communication is half the battle. If your body language is closed off, the phrase will still sound defensive. The key is to match the light, casual meaning of the word browse with your body.
How do I do that?
Well, you make brief, soft eye contact with the vendor. You offer a small, relaxed smile. You say, I'm just browsing, thanks, with a light, upbeat tone of voice. And then you comfortably turn your attention back to the items on the table.
And that's it?
That's it. If you do that, the vendor will instantly relax and leave you alone. You have successfully established a polite boundary.
Okay, so the pressure is totally off. You have successfully defended your personal space. You're relaxed. You're breathing easily. You're browsing. But then you see it.
The treasure.
The treasure. You are looking through a dusty box at the back of the table, and you spot an incredibly cool, retro 1970s film camera. You love photography. You have been looking for this exact model for years. Your heart starts beating a little faster, but there is no price tag on it. What is the strategy now? We are moving from browsing to buying. How do we initiate this dance?
The absolute golden rule of bargaining, which our source material emphasizes over and over again, is this. Do not show extreme excitement. You must maintain a poker face.
Poker face, like you are playing a high-stakes game of cards, you have a winning hand, and you don't want the other players to see it in your eyes.
Exactly. You must hide your emotions, because if you pick up that camera, gasp, hold it to your chest, and scream, "Oh my gosh, I love this, I must have it."
Well, you have already lost the negotiation.
It's over.
The game is over before it even begins.
I assume that's because the vendor instantly knows exactly how desperate I am. If they know I will die if I don't get this camera, they have zero reason to give me a discount. It is basic economics, right? Supply and demand. By showing intense, visible excitement, you just signal to the vendor that your personal demand for this item is incredibly high. And when demand is high, the price stays high.
Makes total sense.
So you must play it cool. You pick up the item casually. You turn it over in your hands slowly. You might even point out a small scratch on it. You want to appear mildly interested, but completely willing to walk away.
Okay, I have my poker face on. I am holding the camera casually. Now comes the terrifying moment where I actually have to ask for the price.
Again, I feel like the panic would set in for a language learner here. My instinct, just to get it over with, would be to point my finger at the camera and just say, "How much?" It is 2 words. It is easy to remember. Is that okay?
How much is grammatically correct. It is efficient. The vendor will definitely understand you. But in this specific context, it is too blunt. It is like swinging a hammer.
Hammer. Ouch.
Yeah. It treats the interaction like a rigid mathematical transaction at the supermarket, rather than a fluid conversation at a flea market. I see. It doesn't invite them to dance. So what is the better option? Our source material gives us a much smoother, much more strategic phrase. Instead of just barking, "How much?" The notes say we should ask, "How much are you asking for this?"
How much are you asking for this? That is a brilliant piece of sociolinguistics. Let's really take a microscope to those 2 phrases and contrast them. How much implies that the price is a fixed fact. It implies there is one true price, like a law of the universe.
Like scanning a barcode at a grocery store. The computer says it is $5, so it is $5.
Right. But adding the words "are you asking" changes the entire psychology of the sentence. How much are you asking for this implies something vastly different.
It implies that the price is just a suggestion. It's just their personal request.
Exactly. The word "asking" indicates that the number they are about to tell you is merely their opening position. It frames the price as a starting point for a conversation, rather than a hard, unchangeable fact. By using the word "asking," you instantly frame the upcoming interaction as a fluid, flexible dialogue.
It is such a clever opening move because it does 2 things at once, right? First, it gives the vendor respect. You are acknowledging that it is their item, it is their table, and they have the right to ask for a certain amount of money. But simultaneously, quietly, you are opening the door for yourself to disagree with that amount.
It totally sets the stage for compromise. You are sending a polite, subconscious signal that you are prepared to negotiate.
Okay, I love this. So you have asked, how much are you asking for this? Let's say the vendor looks at the camera and gives you a number. Now we enter the trickiest, most delicate part of the dance. How do you push back?
This is the hard part.
Right. If the price is too high, how do you ask for a lower number without sounding like a jerk? I think we should explore a specific scenario from our sources here to really understand the mechanics. Let's fly from London over to Brooklyn, New York.
Yes. The story of the vintage clothing market in Brooklyn. This is a perfect example to analyze.
So imagine the scene. A buyer is walking through a crowded weekend market in Brooklyn. They find a gorgeous, oversized, vintage, black leather jacket. They put on their poker face. They hold it casually. They use their smooth opening phrase. "How much are you asking for this?" And the vendor says, "I'm asking $80 for that."
But the buyer's budget is only $60.
Right. The buyer only wants to spend $60. That is a $20 gap between what the vendor wants and what the buyer has. How do we safely close that gap? Because my instinct, if I'm nervous and struggling with the language, is to just point at the jacket and say, "Make it cheaper," or maybe "Give me a discount."
And those are very common mistakes for learners in this high-pressure moment. A learner hears $80, they panic about their budget, and they resort to the simplest vocabulary they know. But we have to look at why "make it cheaper" fails so badly in this environment.
Just saying it out loud make it cheaper. It makes me cringe a little bit. It feels very heavy.
It is very abrasive. From a grammar standpoint, make it cheaper is an imperative sentence. An imperative is a command. It is a direct order. When you use an imperative with a stranger, especially regarding their own money and their own business, it sounds highly aggressive. It completely strips the vendor of their authority.
Yeah, you're treating them like your employee, not an equal business partner.
Exactly. And human nature dictates that nobody likes being given orders. If you point a finger and demand, make it cheaper, the vendor might become deeply offended by your tone. They might cross their arms, refuse to lower the price, or simply refuse to sell the item to you at all.
Even if they secretly would have accepted $60.
Exactly. The tone kills the deal.
So we have to smooth out these clunky demands. We need to replace the hammer with a feather. The sources provide two fantastic alternatives. Instead of ordering them to make it cheaper, we can politely ask, is there any flexibility on the price? Or, my absolute favorite, is there any wiggle room on the price?
Let's really focus on that second phrase. Is there any wiggle room on the price? That is a brilliant, highly native English idiom. It is playful, but very effective.
Wiggle room. I want to visualize this metaphor because I think it helps with remembering it. What does it actually mean to wiggle?
To wiggle is to make small, quick, twisting movements from side to side. Think about a happy dog wiggling its tail.
Okay, I see that.
Or think about trying to fit your body into a very tight pair of denim jeans. You have to wiggle your hips to get them on. Or a child wiggling a loose tooth. It implies movement within a very confined, tight space.
So when we combine it into the noun phrase wiggle room, we are physically visualizing the price of the item as an object sitting inside a tight little box.
That is a great way to look at it. You are asking the vendor, is this price stuck tightly in the box, or is there a little bit of empty space in there? Is there enough space in your profit margin to move this number around just a little bit?
It is such a soft physical analogy. It doesn't sound like you are violently attacking their profit. It just sounds like you're looking for a tiny bit of space to maneuver. It is harmless.
And crucially, look at the grammar. Is there any wiggle room? Is a question, not a demand. You are not telling them what to do. You are asking for their permission to negotiate. You are inviting them to participate.
Okay, so the vendor smiles and says, sure, I have a little bit of wiggle room. Now, the ball is in your court. You have to actually make your counteroffer. The vendor wants $80. You want to pay $60. You have permission to negotiate. Now you need to state your number. What is the danger here? If I just pull out three $20 bills, hold them out and say, I give you $60, does that work?
I give you $60. Again, it communicates the math, but it completely fails the social test. It sounds like a line from a bad mafia movie.
It does. I give you $60, you give me the jacket.
Right. It sounds rigid, demanding, and almost like a threat.
It is very transactional. So what is the polite English phrasing to soften this?
The smooth solution relies on a conditional modal verb. Instead of declaring what you will do, you propose a hypothetical scenario. You should say, would you take $60 for this?
Would you take? Wow, that is incredibly soft.
Yes, the word would creates a safe hypothetical space. It takes the pressure off the immediate, tense reality of the transaction and gently proposes an idea for the vendor to consider. It invites a polite yes or no rather than forcing a confrontation. It is the verbal equivalent of holding out your hand and asking, shall we dance?
Now, I noticed another tiny but fascinating detail in this Brooklyn leather jacket story from our notes. Before the buyer rejected the $80 price and made their $60 offer, they used a very specific phrasing. They said to the vendor, it's a beautiful jacket, but $80 is a little over my budget. Would you take $60? I want to pause on that first part. They complimented the item before they rejected the price.
Yes, they did.
Is that a deliberate psychological trick? Does flattering the merchandise actually make a vendor more likely to drop the price?
Absolutely. It is a highly effective psychological strategy rooted in empathy. You have to think about the vendor's perspective and their ego. Many of these vendors spend hours or even days hunting for these specific vintage items. They curated this collection. They take immense personal pride in their merchandise. It reflects their personal taste.
I see. So if I pick up the jacket and just complain $80 is too much, it's just an old coat, I am not just insulting the price. I am indirectly insulting the vendor's taste and their hard work.
Precisely. You are attacking the value of the item they chose, which naturally makes them defensive. But by starting the sentence with, it's a beautiful jacket, you instantly validate their taste. You agree with them that the item is valuable, desirable, and cool. You put yourself on the same team.
You align yourself with their ego.
Yeah.
And then when you follow it up with, but $80 is a little over my budget, you completely change who is at fault.
Exactly. You make the problem about your personal financial limitations, not about the item's lack of worth. You are essentially saying, your jacket is perfect, but my wallet is inadequate.
That is brilliant. You flatter the item to keep the vendor happy, and you blame your own budget so nobody loses face. It's the ultimate polite confrontation. You are disagreeing with their price by apologizing for your own lack of money.
And in the scenario provided in our sources, this exact combination of flattery and conditional language worked beautifully. The vendor, feeling respected, came down from $80 to $70. The buyer came up from $60 to $65. And they agreed on $65, a perfect friendly compromise.
But let's be real for a second. We are painting a very rosy picture here. Sometimes polite flattery just bounces off. Sometimes asking for wiggle room hits a solid brick wall. What happens when the vendor absolutely refuses to move their price? What is your next move when the door shuts in your face?
When words fail, you have to deploy the ultimate nonverbal weapon of negotiation.
The polite walk away. Let's look at another scenario from our sources. Imagine we leave Brooklyn and we travel all the way to Melbourne, Australia, to the famous Camberwell Sunday Market.
A fantastic, sprawling market. Very different energy from Brooklyn.
Right. So in this scenario, a buyer finds a very unusual old brass lamp. It looks exactly like the magic lamp from the story of Aladdin. The vendor wants $40 for it. The buyer uses all the right smooth phrases. They ask, would you take $20 for it? But the vendor shakes their head. They say no. They say the price is firm at $40. Zero wiggle room.
This is a critical, high-stress moment.
So what should I do here? If I really want the lamp, but I refuse to pay $40, should I start arguing? Should I point out that the lamp is dirty and dented and try to debate the vendor to prove that $40 is an unfair price?
Absolutely not. Arguing is the worst thing you can do. If you try to debate a vendor and prove them wrong, you are challenging their authority. You're trying to make them look foolish. Even if your logical argument is completely correct, their ego will force them to stand firm. They will refuse to sell it to you just out of stubbornness.
So I don't argue. What do?
You execute the polite walk away.
The execution described in the notes here is fascinating. The buyer doesn't argue. They don't complain. The buyer simply smiles, gently puts the brass lamp back down on the table, and says, okay, no worries, thanks anyway. And then they slowly turn around and start walking away down the street. And what happens next is like magic.
Oh, it really is.
The buyer takes about 5 steps away from the table, and the vendor suddenly calls out to them. The vendor shouts, hey, give me $25 and it's yours.
It is a dramatic, almost theatrical shift in the power dynamic of the transaction.
It reminds me of that other note we had in our stack, the role-play scenario set in London regarding the silver pocket watch. It played out almost identically.
Yes, the buyer wanted a 1950s silver pocket watch for £35, but the vendor refused to go below £45, claiming they would make a loss on the sale. The negotiation hit a dead end.
And again, the buyer had initiated the walkaway. They said, I understand. No problem at all. I'll probably just leave it then. Thanks anyway. They physically started to leave, and instantly the vendor stopped them and offered to meet halfway at £40. The walkaway forced the vendor to drop the price. Why is this physical act of turning your back so incredibly powerful?
If we connect this to the broader psychology of power dynamics, the walkaway is the single strongest piece of leverage you have as a consumer. Think about it from the vendor's perspective. While you are standing at their table, holding the item, negotiating, the vendor naturally assumes that you want the item badly enough that eventually you will surrender and pay their asking price.
Right, they think they have you on the hook.
Exactly. They believe they hold all the power because they possess the object of your desire.
They think you are trapped by your own want. But the moment you turn your back...
and walk away, you completely shatter that assumption. You demonstrate visually and physically that you are not desperate. You prove that you are perfectly willing to leave the item behind and go home empty-handed. Suddenly, the vendor realizes they are not just losing an argument. They are about to lose a guaranteed sale entirely.
Okay.
The fear of losing the money overcomes their desire to get the maximum price. The power shifts instantly back to you.
It is deeply ironic, isn't it? The most powerful negotiating tool you have isn't a strong, aggressive, logical argument. It isn't a clever debate tactic. It is simply polite indifference.
Polite indifference. That is a perfect summary. And the absolute key word there is polite. Notice the specific language used during these walkaways in our sources. The buyers didn't just leave in silence. They used very careful phrases. No worries. Thanks anyway.
Huh.
I understand. No problem at all. I'll just leave it.
Right. Because if you get angry, slam the item down on the table and storm off yelling, "This is way too expensive, you are crazy," they are never, ever going to call you back.
Never. Because by yelling, you have insulted them personally. You have broken the social harmony of the market. You have embarrassed them in front of other customers. Their pride will prevent them from ever calling out to you. But by using entirely non-confrontational language, by saying, "I understand, and thanks anyway," you preserve their dignity.
You leave the door open.
Exactly. You leave the emotional door wide open for them to change their mind without losing face. They can call you back and offer a lower price, and it still feels like a friendly, mutual interaction rather than a defeat. You allow them to feel like they are doing you a favor rather than surrendering to your demands.
It is a masterful, multi-layered psychological game. But to execute all of these strategies flawlessly, to understand the vendor's mindset, to know when to ask for wiggle room, to flatter the item, and to know exactly how to execute a polite walkaway, you really need a strong foundational vocabulary. You need to understand the underlying concepts and idioms that native English speakers use when they talk about the culture of buying and selling.
Yes, you do. You need a specific arsenal of words. Our source material refers to these as pocket words. These are the terms you keep in your pocket to help you navigate the landscape.
Let's expand our arsenal right now. We are going to do a detailed linguistic and cultural exploration of a few essential pocket words. And our mission here isn't just to memorize dictionary definitions. We want to understand the why and the how. What do these words reveal about the hidden culture of shopping in the English language?
Let's start with the most foundational term of all, the setting itself, the flea market.
A flea market. Now, if you were a language learner and you take that literal translation, two words, flea and market, it sounds absolutely disgusting.
It really does.
A market full of fleas, those tiny, biting, blood-sucking insects that live on stray dogs. Why would anyone ever want to go shopping there?
It does sound terrible if you translate it literally. It sounds like a health hazard. But we need to look at the history and the traditional naming here. A modern flea market has absolutely nothing to do with actual insects. It is simply the established English term for an outdoor space, often temporary, like a weekend setup in a parking lot or a grassy field, where people gather to sell secondhand goods, vintage clothes, antiques, and sometimes handmade crafts.
So where did the name come from? If there are no bugs, why call it that?
The term is actually a direct translation from the French marché aux puces, which literally means market of the fleas. This was the name given to the outdoor bazaars in Paris in the 1800s. The joke at the time was that the old, used furniture and clothing being sold was so dirty and heavily used that it probably contained fleas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the English adopted the literal translation of the name, but over the centuries, the negative association with dirt and bugs faded away completely. Now it just implies a place to find unique, used treasures.
Okay, so a flea market is a treasure hunt. Which brings us perfectly to pocket word number 2, which is my absolute favorite concept in this entire deep dive, a steal.
A steal. S-T-E-L. This is a fascinating noun phrase to analyze from a cultural perspective.
It really is, because normally the verb to steal is a serious crime. You take something that doesn't belong to you, it is morally wrong, you can go to jail for it. But in the context of a flea market, or any kind of shopping in English, calling a purchase a steal is the ultimate compliment to your own shopping skills.
It is. When someone says, "I got this beautiful vintage designer leather bag for only $10, it was an absolute steal," they are saying that the price was so incredibly low, so shockingly in their favor that it almost feels illegal. It feels like they committed a robbery and got away with it.
But they didn't actually steal it, they paid for it. So why use the word for a crime as a compliment?
It highlights a very specific cultural value regarding capitalism and commerce. In Western shopping culture, particularly at secondhand markets, finding a massive bargain is a point of immense personal pride. People love to brag to their friends about finding a steal. It isn't just about saving money, it is about the thrill of the victory. It shows that you are savvy, smart, and that you successfully outsmarted the system, or in this case, you outsmarted the vendor who didn't realize how valuable their own item was.
Ah, so it is a victory of knowledge. You knew the bag was worth $100, the vendor thought it was worth $10, and your knowledge allowed you to steal that extra $90 in value. It is the highest level of success in bargaining.
Precisely. Which brings us directly to the exact opposite experience. Pocket word number 3, a ripoff.
A ripoff. RIP-OFF. Now, this is a very emotional, aggressive term.
It is. It carries a lot of weight.
Even just the imagery of the words sounds violent.
Huh.
To rip something off, like tearing a bandage off your skin. In our source material, they give a couple examples of a ripoff. One is a vendor trying to charge $50 for a heavily used, plain white cotton T-shirt with holes in it.
Yikes.
Right. Another example is the fancy antique shop down the road trying to charge £100 for a pocket watch that is realistically only worth £40.
When you call something a ripoff, you are stating that the price is drastically unfairly inflated. You are being drastically overcharged. But it is much more than just a statement of mathematical fact. It isn't just saying, that is expensive.
Yeah.
It carries a profound sense of moral outrage.
You feel like you are being exploited.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's look at the violent imagery you mentioned. Being ripped off implies that your money is being violently, unfairly separated from you by deception. When someone leaves a store and says that place is a total ripoff, they are accusing the vendor of being fundamentally dishonest. They are saying the vendor is trying to take unfair advantage of the customer's lack of knowledge.
This connects so deeply to what we were just talking about with a steal. If we look at these two concepts side by side, a steal on one end of the spectrum and a ripoff on the other,
it reveals a core tension in how English speakers view commerce and negotiation. We deeply revere the concept of fairness and personal victory. We want a good deal. We want to feel like we are the smart ones who outsmarted the system that is the joy, the high of the steal. But conversely, we deeply, deeply resent feeling exploited. We hate the feeling of being the foolish one, the feeling that someone else is taking unfair advantage of our ignorance that is the burning anger of the ripoff.
the entire bargaining dance is just a tightrope walk between trying to get a steal and trying to avoid a ripoff. And that leads us perfectly to the middle ground, the sweet spot where fairness is actually achieved and both parties are happy. Pocket word number 4, to meet halfway.
To meet halfway, this is a beautiful verbalization of mutual compromise.
The geometry of this phrase is so simple and clear. Imagine a physical distance on the ground between you and the vendor. You are standing on a line marked $10. The vendor is standing over on a line marked $20. To meet halfway means you both agree to walk exactly $5 toward each other, and you shake hands in the exact middle at $15.
It is a geometric metaphor for social harmony. The beauty of meeting halfway is that neither side gets exactly what they originally wanted, but, and this is crucial, neither side feels completely defeated. You share the sacrifice equally.
You both give up a little bit of ground, a little bit of your ego to reach an agreement.
And that act of mutual compromise is highly respected in English-speaking cultures. If a vendor looks at you and says, let's meet halfway, they are extending an olive branch. They're offering a fair, logical resolution to the conflict that allows both of you to walk away feeling respected.
It is the perfect, harmonious conclusion to the bargaining dance. And just to complete our list and review what we learned earlier, let's not forget pocket word number 5, to browse, which, as we established with our car metaphor, means to look casually without a strong intention to buy, keeping the car in neutral and serving as your polite, friendly shield against unwanted sales pressure.
Having these 5 concepts, the history of the flea market, the victory of a steal, the anger of a ripoff, the harmony of meeting halfway, and the safety of browsing, having these in your pocket gives you the cultural framework you need to navigate these spaces confidently. You aren't just translating words anymore, you understand the psychology behind them.
And I want to emphasize this heavily to you, the listener. Putting these words and phrases in your pocket isn't just for buying vintage jackets in Brooklyn or brass lamps in Melbourne at a weekend flea market. The linguistic concepts we're discussing today, the art of softening demands, asking for wiggle room, the power of the polite walkaway, the desire to meet halfway. These are universal tools. You can take them out of the flea market and use them anywhere.
That is a vital point to make. We are using the flea market as our laboratory today because the rules are so clear there, but the chemistry of polite negotiation applies everywhere in the English language.
It really does. Think about it. You can use these exact same smooth linguistic strategies in a high-stakes corporate negotiation when discussing a contract. You can use them when you are at a dealership trying to buy a used car. You could even use the concept of meeting halfway when you were trying to split household chores with a stubborn roommate. The psychology of saving face and softening demands is universal.
Wow, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We really took a deep dive into the nuances of this language.
We did. Let's take a moment to recap the journey just to make sure all these concepts are locked in.
We started by establishing the chaotic, high-pressure environment of the street market. We discussed the psychological panic of being approached by a vendor and how to neutralize that anxiety with the simple, boundary-setting phrase, "I'm just browsing, thanks," remembering to add the thanks as a mandatory social cushion.
Then, we learn the importance of the poker face. When you find a treasure, you have to hide your excitement to protect your leverage. We learn to soften our inquiries, completely avoiding the blunt "how much" and replacing it with the conversational invocation. How much are you asking for this?
We explored the delicate, complex art of compromise. We threw away aggressive commands like, "make it cheaper." We replaced them with polite inquiries about wiggle room and flexibility. We learned the conditional magic of asking, "would you take?" to create a safe, hypothetical space. And we saw how flattering the item before rejecting the price protects the vendor's ego.
And when all else fails, we mastered the ultimate weapon, the polite walkaway. We saw how polite indifference, gently saying, "no worries, thanks anyway," and turning your back can completely shift the power dynamics and bring a vendor's price crashing down simply by proving you are not desperate. Finally, we loaded our pockets with essential vocabulary, learning to navigate the fine line between celebrating a steal and avoiding a ripoff by gracefully meeting halfway.
It is a comprehensive, sophisticated toolkit for navigating social friction in English.
And that is the most important thing for you to remember as an English learner. Bargaining in English is meant to be a fun, friendly interaction. It is a dance. It is not a battle. It is not a war where you have to destroy the enemy. You don't need to be aggressive to win.
In fact, as we have seen, being aggressive will almost always work against you. Taking your time to speak clearly, deliberately, and politely is always, always better than rushing and sounding demanding.
Use these smooth phrases in your daily life. Practice them. Let them become second nature, replacing the clunky translations that might accidentally offend someone.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, broader reflection to mull over. We have spent this entire session looking at how the English language uses extreme politeness compliments, soft conditional questions, apologies, and gentle metaphors like wiggle room to mask the financial friction of haggling. It is a highly elaborate social performance designed to pretend that we aren't actually arguing about money.
It really is a performance. We're wearing masks of politeness to hide the transaction.
So my question for you, the listener, to consider is this. What does the bargaining language in your own native culture look like? Are you culturally wired to view negotiation as this delicate, polite dance where directness is avoided at all costs? Or, in your culture, is negotiation viewed as an aggressive, passionate sport where loud arguments, dramatic gestures, and firm, blunt demands are actually seen as a sign of mutual respect and strength?
Oh, that is a fascinating question. Because if you come from a culture where shouting and arguing passionately over the price is the expected, normal, respectful way to do business, using soft English phrases like, "is there any wiggle room?" might feel incredibly weak, fake, and unnatural to you.
Exactly. Your cultural baseline completely changes the way you perceive these interactions. Think about how your own background changes the way you shop and the way you interpret these English phrases. The words we choose to use, whether they are blunt commands or soft questions, reflect the deep cultural values we hold about money, respect, and social conflict.
That is a brilliant thought to end on. Language is never just about grammar. It is about how we choose to treat each other. And sometimes, especially when money and social expectations collide, the landscape can get confusing. But with the right phrases in your pocket, you can step into any market, anywhere in the world, and navigate that environment with confidence and grace. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep exploring, keep practicing, take your time with the language, and remember that every conversation is a chance to learn the dance. Until next time.